What if Pokeball choice mattered? Pokemon has always been about choices. What starter do you pick? Which team do you build? What moves do you teach? But over the years, the formula has evolved, tweaking and refining how those choices matter. From generations 1 to 5, Game Freak continuously increased the variables that players had to work with, making every decision more meaningful. One glaringly obvious aspect of Pokemon has remained an aesthetic choice: the Pokeball. So, in this video, we're going to discuss the idea of what if Pokeballs had in-battle effects? But first, I would like to lay the groundworks of this idea by talking about the evolution of choice in Pokemon. To understand why this could be such a natural addition, let's take a look at how Pokemon expanded strategic depth over time. Generation 1, the foundation was simple. A Pokemon's effectiveness was based on its type, moveset, and base stats. DVs, which were the precursor to IVs, existed but were largely invisible to players. Similar to that was battle experience, which functioned like a primitive form of EVs. But since they could all be maxed out, there was really no decision making to be had. Generation 2 introduced the Dark and Steel types, as well as tweaking the type chart for better balance. But the real game changer? Held items. Although rudimentary at first, they paved the way for modern competitive strategy, giving players more ways to customize their teams. Generation 3 was the biggest mechanical upheaval the series had ever seen. Firstly, it replaced DVs with IVs, which effectively worked the same but expanded the level of variety. EVs replaced battle experience, making stat allocation an intentional process. No longer could you just max them all out and forget about it. You would now have to think about where those points went. Weather became a factor in this generation. Things such as rain, sandstorm, and sun are still prevalent in the metagame today, leading to entire teams being built around them. But the biggest addition? Abilities. A single ability could make an otherwise uninteresting Pokemon viable, or render a powerhouse ineffective. This was the most important decision Game Freak has ever made for Pokemon battles. And the last thing that Generation 3 added was double battles, which to this very day is the primary battle format for official tournaments. Generation 4 introduced the physical special split. Before this, every move's category was based on its type, which made no logical sense. Fire Punch was special, but yet Hyper Voice was physical. This change finally allowed Pokemon to fully utilize their stats. Gengar could actually now use its high special attack effectively without being stuck by the suboptimal physical ghost types, which, by the way, makes no sense. Dark should have been physical, Ghost should have been special. Just saying. Generation 5. This era didn't really shake the foundation at all, but refined it. Team Preview changed the competitive scene forever, and hidden abilities introduced a new layer of depth. While not as groundbreaking as previous generations, Gen 5 is often considered to be peak Pokemon, a perfect balance of strategy and customization. But then, something changed. Game Freak seemingly decided that they had perfected the core formula. Instead of refining it further, they introduced generation-specific gimmicks to make each new game stand out. This means Mega Evolutions, Z-Moves, Dynamax, Terrestrialization, and whatever Gen 10 is going to have. Each of these are flashy and unique, but ultimately temporary, and doesn't add to the series as a whole. And yet, one last system could have been explored before moving on to these gimmicks. One that would have felt completely natural. Pokeball abilities. Pokeballs are arguably the single most iconic thing in Pokemon, second only to the Pokemon themselves. And while they come in dozens of varieties, their effects are limited to catch rates, friendship boosts, and battlefield aesthetics. But what if the ball a Pokemon was caught in had a lasting impact? I imagine an in-game option to change the Pokemon's Pokeball, perhaps with the exception of Ultra Beast and Cherish Balls maybe, because those are special. But each Pokeball would come with a passive effect in battle, a lot like an ability. There are some obvious options to be made, like the Fastball could increase your speed or make your first move have priority. A heal ball would restore 1/4 of your HP upon entry after hazards take effect. Others would require more creativity, like a net ball would reduce incoming water and bug type moves by, let's say, 20%. The Dusk Ball could boost secondary effects like a weaker Serene Grace or buff Dark Ghost and Poison moves. The Heavy Ball would double the weight of its user, potentially making Heavy Slam viable for lighter Pokemon. Apricorn Balls grant immunity to spore-based moves similar to how grass Pokemon are immune. The Timer Ball could alter RNG-based timing effects. For example, if your Pokemon gets put to sleep, it would roll how many turns it would need to be asleep twice and picks the lower for you, but if you put your opponent to sleep, it would roll twice and pick the higher. If you both have the Timer Ball, then it would just roll as normal. I have no doubt that the more competitively minded of you are already imagining the possibilities. Custom ability would skyrocket, making even underused Pokemon viable in ways we had never imagined before. I imagine that in this format, the Pokeball that a Pokemon is in would be visible in the team preview, but that's not all. Beyond just passive effects, Pokeball abilities would interact with some existing mechanics. For example, Ditto does not copy your opponent's ball by transforming, giving just the smallest bit of choice to an otherwise bland and formulaic pick of a Pokemon. Zoroark would disguise its Pokeball to match one of your teammates in the team preview. And then there would be new abilities similar to Synchronize as well. You could change your Pokemon's Pokeball to match your opponent's, or new moves similar to Swap or Trick that would switch your Pokeballs around with your target. Now, this would require a bit of lore justification, but I think it can work. And that's the foundation of my idea. Pokemon has always been about choices. Pokeball abilities would just add one more layer of depth, subtly influencing battles without overshadowing existing mechanics. And because each effect is relatively minor, the meta would remain fresh and dynamic. Now, I know I'm stroking my own ego here, but I think we were robbed of a world where this is an option. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Do you think that Pokeball abilities would be a fun addition, or just complete chaos? And what other tweaks to the core formula could you see? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you all for watching, and have a good day.